All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Hill. I work for a small, tiny government agency called DHS, but we're now called CISA. So if you see down there in the bottom left-hand corner, CISA stands for Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. It's a brand new agency, just stood up last December, I think, October, something like that. I don't know. I don't ask those questions. But before I get started, I want to take a selfie with the room. So if you don't want your picture taken, because people get a little weird about that at security conferences, turn your head, okay? All right. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to talk about a government red team. First, I'm going to talk about who I am. So again, my name is Jason Hill. I run what's called a small group called NCATS. Now we're called CATS, but we're the CISA assessments team. We do all of the, I'm not allowed to use the word offensive, but offensive security assessments. You guys know what that means in here, I hope. Thank you. So I'm the branch chief for NCATS, so I own all of those guys. I just retired from the Virginia National Guard. I did the same thing there that I do with CISA. We hack all the things and take all the stuff. I built the red team at CISA because I used to work down there in the bottom. So I worked for those two guys. And I stole everything that I learned from them and took it to DHS and built a team there. And the reason I'm giving this talk is I want to bring what we do out into the light. When you think about red teams, for some of you folks here, any intel people, guard people, if you've ever worked up at the fort, the other name for NSA, they're real quiet about what they do. And so I don't want to do that. I want to bring out what we call the nation's red team to the masses because I think it's something that we can all benefit from. So I've given talks on the right, I've worked in the middle, and I do all that so I can do what's on the left. That's what I like to do. I don't like to come here. I like to go ride my motorcycle on the track. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about CISA assessment. I'm going to give you my 30-second elevator pitch. We have 3 different sections in CISA assessments. The first section is what we call cyber hygiene. We do Nessus scans and Nmap scans of the external perimeter. Anyone in the United States can sign up for this. Federal government agencies have to sign up for it. There's something called a binding operational directive, a BOD. They have to sign up for this and get their perimeter scanned weekly. And then they have to address criticals within 15 days. So if you guys remember a small vulnerability that came out called Heartbleed a few years back, well, the federal government didn't know what their exposure was. They didn't know how many systems they had on the internet that was vulnerable to Heartbleed. So we just happened to have this service, and we scanned all of the agencies and found, I don't remember, it was 130 instances of this, and we pushed out that to all of those agencies, and within 2 weeks, I think we had it down to 3, or they had it down to 3 instances. So those up in Congress finally got together and did something smart, and they instituted a binding operational directive and said all of federal agencies need to get this, but critical infrastructure, private sectors, what we call SLTT, or state, local, tribal, territorial, anyone in the U.S., as long as you're a U.S.-based company or a U.S. company, you can get this service. We also do phishing campaigns similar to Go Fish Me or Go Fish Me, whatever the heck it's called. But we do phishing assessments with agencies where we start with the Nigerian print-style scam all the way up to spear phishing. We've got remote penetration testing where we do a 1 or 2 week remote-only penetration test against agencies. We have risk and vulnerability assessments. That's our 2-week pen test. We have validated architecture design review, otherwise known as VADERS, because our boss is a big Star Wars guy, like most of us in here probably. And then on advanced ops, we have something called critical product evaluation. Right now, we're taking election systems, because that's the hot topic nowadays. We're taking election systems into our labs, and we're tearing them completely apart all the way down to the firmware to see if there's any vulnerabilities in them. And then last but not least, we have the red team assessments. That's what we're going to talk about today. Why do we do all of this? Oh, and by the way, all of these are free to our customers. You all are paying for them, and so am I with your tax money, but it's free to them. Okay, so why do we do it? So we want to reduce the risk exposure to the nation, not just the federal government. So your tax dollars are actually working towards something. So when you submit taxes, when your son or daughters, or you sign up for federal tuition assistance, when you sign up for selective services, whenever you give your data to the government, we're trying to protect it. So you're actually getting something you're paying for. We're trying to enable data-driven decisions. So all of this data that we're pulling in, who are my testers here? Pen testers, red teamers. Okay, vulnerability scanners. I got some guy. Okay, so all of that data that we're generating, we're taking it and doing statistics on it and finding that, well, there's some really smart data scientists. I don't do that. We just collect the data and give it to them. But they're finding trends. What are the biggest vulnerabilities in the nation? What are the biggest vulnerabilities in a specific sector? Energy, oil, gas, those kinds of things. And then we want to influence operational behavior. Just another term for clean your stuff up, right? Okay, so let's talk about red team assessments, because I don't have that much time. Our red team assessment is a 90-day assessment. And we do this red team assessment for one goal, for one reason. We want to test your people, your processes, and your technologies. I always tell the folks, you spend millions and millions of dollars on people, processes, and technologies. How do you know you're getting what you're paying for? How do you know that you hired the right person? How do you know that the policies that your CISA wrote is doing what it's supposed to do, and that your people are actually following it? And how do you know that when you come to these shows and you get attacked by all those vendors and you buy one of their pieces of equipment, did you buy the right thing? And did your people configure it properly with the policy that you put in place? What I tell them is, if you did it right, you may never know that you did it right. If you did it wrong, you're going to find out way too late that you did it wrong, because you'll be dealing with some sort of breach. So 90-day assessment. The first 2/3 of that assessment, roughly 60 days, is what we call our entrench and assess phase. This is where we're going to try to break into the system, into the network, gain access to whatever we can, laterally move, privilege escalate, and then gain access to what we call sensitive business systems. So these are items that I tell the customer, hey, give me something that is going to, if the threat actor gains access to, is going to have you in front of televisions, in front of Congress, or in handcuffs if you don't protect. Whatever those systems are, let me know and I'll go after them. Sometimes they give us systems, sometimes they ask us to find them ourselves, and we usually do. And we do all of this in a very quiet way. So we try to emulate that advanced persistent threat, right? Advanced persistent threat is a code word for the bad guys. Right now, I think we're Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Those are APTs. So we're trying to emulate those guys so that the agencies will know how to deal with them. So that's the first half, or the first 2/3. We do this black box style. The only thing that I ask for from the customer is a set of IPs. Why do I need a set of IPs? So I know that when I land on their systems, it's actually their system. Sometimes we'll send an email and someone at home will click it, and then I get a call back from someone's home machine. I don't want that. And as you'll see, some of these agencies use Gmail, so they can access this Gmail from wherever they want. So that way, when I get a call back or a beacon or whatever you want to call a communication channel back, I can go back and deconflict with, yes, that belongs to this agency, or no, it doesn't. We try to keep who knows about this assessment down to the smallest amount of people as possible. We call them our trusted agents. The reason I do that is because I don't want to tell the entire agency that we're doing this. I don't want them to go tell their SOC folks that they're doing this, because if I do that, how many SOC people in here? How many defensive people? If I tell you that you're about to get an assessment, what are you going to do? You're going to look for me, right? You're going to try to keep me out of there. Why? Because you don't want to look like you're not doing your job. And I get it, because I've been on that side before, and I don't want to look like I'm not doing my job. I don't want the boss to come to me and go, why aren't you? So we try not to tell anyone, so they don't game the system. So they don't try to, well, you get it. So that's that first 2/3. Nobody really knows about it. I'm trying to keep my TAs, my trusted agents, to about 2, maybe 3. In some instances, they go and tell everyone, and then it's 60, like our last assessment, which is the one I'm going to tell you about. So that last 30 days there, we do something called measurable events. My operators hate this. They hate doing it. And I don't care, because I'm the boss. I get to tell them what to do. So they absolutely hate measurable events. Any military people in here? Measles. You know what measles are? We stole that term. Measurable events, we call them MELs, measurable event list. They absolutely hate doing this. Where's Brent? You hate these, right? Yeah, right. So, yeah, he's responsible for them. So measurable events are, after we've gained access, after we're DA, EA, after we own your entire network, we're going to start doing something called measurable events. These are items that are, we do them to get some sort of reaction. So we send up flares in the network. We want there to be some sort of response. I don't care what the response is because I'm not here to tell you that the response was right or wrong. This is where I'm testing their people, processes, and technologies. Things like we'll kick off an internal port scan of a system. Anybody looking at internal port scans? Most likely not. Anyone doing segmentation in their network where you can see a port scan going from one segment to the other? These are some of the things that we're trying to point out, segmentation. Another thing that we'll do, we'll create a domain administrator in the network. Are you guys looking for domain admins? If you are, how long does it take for you to identify one? Those are the kinds of things we want to see. The last thing that we do is we kick off ransomware in the network. And we target 4 admins and 4 normal users. Now the ransomware is, all it is a program that pops up on their screen, full screen, they can't get out of it. And it looks like it's encrypting files. It's just running through your drive and showing you the files on the drive that it's encrypting. It's not really doing anything, but it's stuck there, and it's intended to make that user panic. You start seeing those files getting encrypted, and you're like, oh my God, what do I do? And the results are horrible. Where are my admin? You guys and gals are the worst, the worst. And I can say that because I used to be an admin. What we find typically is people will shut their machines off, and then they'll do this, and then they'll turn them back on. How many of you in here practice that? Okay, some people in here, they'll admit it, others won't. Okay, so this is one of the most important slides that I show everyone. There is a difference between a red team assessment and a penetration test. There is a difference. If you didn't know that, you are now going to go to school. I'm about to teach you. I'm about to feed you, baby birds. A penetration test is quiet. I'm sorry, a penetration test is loud and obnoxious. Anyone here been through a penetration test on the wrong side of one? Yeah. You know about it going on. It's obnoxious. You can't really pay attention to the real stuff that's going on because they're setting off all kinds of alarms and crazy stuff. But the goal of a pen test is to find as many vulnerabilities as you can within the time frame that you have. So you have to be loud, obnoxious, and fast. In a red team assessment, I have 90 days to get in. And there's been times where it's taken us 7 weeks to get just that initial foothold. It takes us forever sometimes to get there. The biggest takeaway from this is, what are the goals? So the goal for a pen test, show me all the vulnerabilities you can as fast as possible in a given time frame. The goal for a red team is, show me if my people and my process and my technologies are doing what I'm paying them to do, and if they are not, help me fix them. What else is important up there? Not much, but you can see the differences. Okay, so what does our infrastructure look like? We'll talk a little technical. This is what our current infrastructure looks like. So on the left-hand side, you've got CISA. That's where we have a lab in Arlington, very tiny lab space. You would think we would have this really cool like hacking room that you see on CSI, but we don't, and we don't do double people on one keyboard hacking. People have seen that episode. Okay, so here on the left, we use what's called Cobalt Strike. Cobalt Strike is a command and control piece of software. That's what we use as our main piece of software to get our commands back from systems once we gain access, and how we collaborate with each other, and then how we generate reports for the customer, some of them. So on the left, you see team servers. So we have about 20 team servers in our network. Okay, and then what you see next to that is an Amazon EC2 instance where we have what we call redirectors in the cloud. So we have a Class C in Arlington, and it's pretty much burned to the ground because we've done penetration testing with it for the last 6 years. So every agency knows that this specific Class C is burned. They know that it's us. So we want to come from somewhere that they don't know. So we come from Amazon. So every time we get an implant on a system inside your network, it's beaconing out back to somewhere in Amazon. Are you going to block Amazon? I'm not sorry. Yeah, Amazon. You're going to block Amazon? I keep thinking, yeah, you're not going to block AWS, right? because the boss is going to come in and be really upset that he can't watch his Prime videos at work, right? So you're not going to block AWS. So we have a couple of different channels up there. You can see one of our communication channels is over DNS. Cobalt Strike has the ability to do comms over DNS. So we'll set up the drawback to this DNS is that it's very slow. So issuing commands and taking data or pushing data, it takes forever to do it over DNS. So we usually use that for what we call our long haul C2. Our long haul is something that once we gain access to a network, we'll get that communication channel established, and then we put that thing to sleep for hours on end. And it's only there so that we can gain access back if we lose access over our web channel that you see there in the middle, HTTP C2. That's a lot faster. Up until this past assessment that we just finished, we were using some domain fronting, which AWS has somehow seemed to mitigate it, and now it's a pain in our neck. So you see down there we're doing some domain fronting through CloudFront, which now we've got to figure out a new way to do it. So on the right, you see the fuzzy seal down there was the second to last assessment that we just completed. So from there, guys, they go out to AWS, and then from AWS, they come back to us. Okay, so what does that look like? So here are the amount of domains that we use. We use, I don't know, that's like 15 or 20 different domains. So we set up effectively 3 different channels for communication into the network. And we do that so that if they find one of our communication paths and block it and cut us out, we always have another way in. I'm telling you all of this, all of you defenders, because if you clean out one, you got to look for the rest. And it might not be the same IOCs that you're looking for when you found the first one. So up there you can see I blocked them out for your safety, not mine, because if I told you what they were, you know how the rest of that goes. Okay, so let's talk about methodology. Let's talk about methodology. I'm sorry if you've seen this a billion times if you're in cybersecurity, but there are people in here who have never seen this. Raise your hand if you've never seen this before. See? Okay, so we're going to talk about it. So this is what's effectively known as the wheel of death. Because if you're in cybersecurity, you have seen this thing a billion times. It's basically hacker methodology. There are a ton of these on the internet. We use this one to explain to everyone how it works. But we're going to start up there with RECON. We've got to do open source, what I call information gathering. I don't call it intelligence gathering because I'm not an intel agency. So we're looking for people to phish. We're looking for a way in. We've got to do all of this recon. We've got to enumerate. We've got to look for a path. We've got to find some way to get in. So that starts in the recon phase. Once we find a way to get in, we go to the exploitation phase. And for us, that's usually phishing to gain that initial foothold. Once we've exploited and landed on a box and we've gained that first foothold, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to persist. So usually what happens is we gain access to your computer and you shut it off, well, we lose access because we're running in memory. So if we don't somehow persist in your machine or in your network and you shut down and restart, like the people do with the ransomware, we're booted out. So we've got to persist some way, somehow. After we persist, we want to escalate. I need to get as high level of privilege that I can to address my sensitive business system. I don't necessarily need EADA, but I need as high a level of permissions to access those SBSs. And then once I gain that, we do what's called post-exploitation. That's gaining access to our sensitive business system and then trying to exfil data out of the network. All right, and again, remember, we're doing all of this because we're trying to show impact to the agency. The reason it's in a circle, for those of you that don't know, the reason it's in a circle is every time you make a move, you start all over again. I need to know where I'm at in the network. I need to do more recon to find out where I want to go. Once I find out where I want to go, I got to move there. I've got to exploit or move there. Once I move there, then I've got to do all of these things over again. So we're going to talk about an actual red team assessment that we conducted. So again, I've obfuscated the name for your safety, not mine. So we're going to say it's Agency X. This agency has between 1 and 1 million employees. And the reason I did that is because I know some of you all are smart in here. If I tell you how many employees they have, you're going to go look it up, and then I'll find out on the internet you figured it out. They have a ton of several sensitive business systems. and they are responsible for some ICS stuff, okay? They are a large government agency. They have about 6 or 7 sub-agencies, I believe, if I remember correctly. So each one of their sub-agency is a subdomain under their forest. So keep that in mind. So, okay, so timeline of stuff. So remember, we talked about RECON, exploitation, persistence, privilege escalation, and post-exploitation. And this is the timeline of what we did, and I want to point out a couple of things. Operations began August 27th, 2018. We did our open source research that same day. About what is that? 9 days later, phishing began. So we found our person, we started phishing them. 4 days later, 5 days later, we had initial access to that user. Same day, we persisted, thank God. 2 days later, we started moving in the network. We found a way to move. And then, what is that? 10 more days, 13 days? We had DA rights, EA rights, and then as soon as we got our EA rights, you can see that it didn't matter for our first SBS. So if you can see, well, I don't know. Yeah, that works. There we go. 919. So before we had DA in the network, we had enough privileges to get to that first SBS. So you don't always need to be domain administrator. And then we've got access to, let's try this again. So right here, we started targeting it on the 12th. By the 16th, we had database access. We're always trying to get database access so we can pull out the information. So let's go through each one of these. So RECON, remember I kind of talked about cyber hygiene in my commercial speech. Cyber hygiene does that scanning, gets this report back, and they send it to the agencies. Well, we take that report because we're not an APT, and I don't have 12, 18 months just to do RECON and find everything I need. So I'll take the results from cyber hygiene and see if there's anything in there that I can use. There never is because people are closing their vulnerabilities externally. We're also looking for people that are supposed to interact with the public. We're looking for those folks that deal with hiring. We're looking for those human resource folks. We're looking for anyone that is expecting to get, they're expecting to get information from outside. Those are the people we're targeting. And we're looking for information that they're responsible for safeguarding, those SPSs. Okay, so phishing began. We delivered a phishing email. So I want to kind of talk to you about how we do our phishing. When you think about phishing, you think about sending 500 emails to a company and calculating the statistics, right? We don't do that here. We do that in our phishing campaign. We do that in our pen test. What we do here is we find one person and we send them an email. And that email is, hey, how's it going? I see that you're responsible for this information. I've got some questions for you. Can you talk to me about it? And their answer is yes, I would love to talk to you about it. And then you go back and forth with this person. We'll go back maybe 4 or 5 times before we send them anything malicious. Why do we do that? Because people love to help, and they're a lot less suspicious when you're talking to them about their job. So we kind of play on their job and what they're supposed to do. So we send this person a couple emails back and forth. We'll get into what those emails look like here in a second. And the reason that we build that rapport is when we send them a link, we're not sure if it's going to work yet. So we build that report, we send something, hey, they'll respond, hey, your link doesn't work. Oh, it doesn't? Well, here, let me attach the document and send it to you this time. Hey, your document didn't work. I didn't get it. Oh, you didn't get it? Well, that tells me it got filtered, right? And then I try to send another document. Hey, did you get that document? And this could take, like I showed you before, phishing began on September 6th, ended on September 11th. So 4 or 5 days it took to go back and forth with this person. On our last assessment, it took 7 weeks to get a foothold because we had to keep going back and forth to figure out what would work. So these people are your test bed. That's why we build that rapport. And also, so typically what happens is we either send them a link that does something and errors out, or a document that errors out. And they respond back and say, hey, I got your document, I clicked on it, but it gave me this weird error. And we respond back, and this is what we call closing the loop. We respond back with, oh, really? Didn't do that for me. Let me go talk to my IT guy. Computers are so weird. Typically, what that does for that user is, we call it closing the loop. We let that user down gently so they can say, well, they're going to get back to me, and I don't really have time to go back and find out if I'm going to get this document back or not. So I'll just wait for them to send it back to me. And what that does is it allows it does two things. One, they're less suspicious and they're not gonna run off and go, oh crap, I think I might have clicked on something that I shouldn't have. Should I go tell someone? No, because he just wrote me back and said, yeah, it's an error. You know, no big deal. The second thing it does is, if I get booted completely out of the network, 6 weeks later, I can go back to this person, we'll call her Mary, and say, hey Mary, do you remember that document that I had? Would you mind trying that again? I think my computer guys fixed it. And you send it to them, and then they click on it and give you access right back into the network. I know, right? That's awesome. Okay, so what does our phishing payload for this assessment look like? So on the left, you see a website that we have. We've got this guy, he loves building websites. So he built this website. One of the problems that we have with websites and sending phishing links is when we get a domain, it's usually not old enough, and it usually gets filtered by Palo Alto, by all of the content filters, right? And so what we have to do is we have to build these in advance, park our domains at them, and build a pretty decent website so that they can be categorized properly. And what that means is that when you go to, if you're in your office and you go to, this is Cybersecurity, just some stupid name we came up with. If you were to go to that and it wasn't categorized and you had proper content filtering in place, it wouldn't let you go there because it would say, hey, this site is unknown, or it's too young, or depending on what your policy is for this. So again, people, process, and technologies, things we're testing for your agency here. And that's a side thing because all we're trying to do is phish and gain access. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to run out of time. So this is what it looks like on the left. When the user clicks a link, in this particular case, the link would take you to a page, an index page, and inside that index page would be a redirect to an HTA. An HTA is just a web application that the user, when they click on this link, it'll take them there. It'll try to run this application. The user will get, you really can't see that. This is kind of blurry, but it says, hey, do you want to run this, or do you want to save it? And the user's like, yeah, I'll run it, I guess, because Jason told me to in the email. And so what you see on the right is the actual code. You can see up there that we use .NET to JavaScript, which we really can't use anymore because that got burned to death, so we've got to come up with our own stuff, or new stuff. So here's the email. This is where we're building trust. I know it's kind of hard to read, and I blurred a whole lot of stuff out. Again, you guys know why. It's for your safety, not mine. But on the bottom, we're trying to talk to Peter. Peter is responsible for conducting, he's responsible for community outreach. And Peter is responsible for not just community outreach, but setting up tours, I think, for kids. So we wrote to him. We found this out in our open source stuff. And we said, hey, Peter, hey, I work at a school, and I'm trying to get a field trip set up, and I want to bring my kids. Can you tell me more information about it? That's the first email down there. He writes back this huge email. He's so helpful, thank God. Hey, Jason, yeah, we've got this. We do this for schools all the time. You know, here's some more information. Click on this link. Go to here. I don't know, maybe he's phishing me, I don't know, but he, wouldn't that be horrible? Except he's going to jail because he's not allowed to do it. Anyways, so he says, yeah, click on this link. This link will take you to a calendar of events, blah, 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 blah. So we say, thank you. Hey, listen, we're still a couple of weeks out, but I've got this interactive calendar on my website. Would you please go to it and see if there's a couple of days in there that fit your schedule? And if they do, let me know, and I'll get signed up with you. So he clicks the link, and it takes him to a page, and on that, inside that page is a JavaScript redirect that sends them somewhere else and gives them the HTA. And we say, hey, listen, when you go to this calendar, it might make you run it. It's an interactive calendar, so you got to run it. He's going to run it. Who in here wouldn't? If we're building a report, why not? Click. It's not my computer. I don't care. So he clicked on the link and he gave us access. He ran it and he called back and he said, hey, your calendar's not working. Because what it did is once he clicked it and it said run, it redirected him to a 404 or something like that, or an error page. It said there's something wrong with the calendar. What you're not seeing is the response from him saying, hey, your calendar's broke. Oh, is it? Let me go talk to the IT guys. Maybe they can fix it, right? And if we ever hear back from him, then we'll say, hey, it's still broke. We'll do the manual thing for now. But he's not going to respond to me. He's got way too much work to do to come ask me if I'm going to get back to him, all right? So I'm never going to talk to Peter again. Okay, so that's phishing. We got in. So persistence, 9/11, we established persistence. Great. Here's our persistence. We use something called, we built a DLL for all of you technical people in here. We use something called REGASM. REGASM is a Microsoft binary, and it registers, I can't remember, shell code maybe? Not shell code, but assembly code. I can't remember what it does. All I know is that RegASM has the ability to run a DLL if you put it in a certain format, which is what you kind of see up there in that blurry on the left piece. So if you want to know more about that, Google RegASM and running DLLs. We compile the DLL to run, and as long as you do it with, there's a /u, an unregistered class, as long as you have an unregistered class inside of there, it'll run it. That's what we did. It still works, by the way, so don't break it if you work in security. I need it. Okay, so 913, we gained access. We now have persistence, and now we're starting our lateral movement, and we're looking for DAs. Okay, this is how we got DAs. SPNs, so service principal name. Every time you register a service in Windows, you usually have to use an account. Typically, those accounts are service accounts, and those accounts need passwords. Even in, who in here works in a place that you have to use a PIV card to log in? Anyone in here? Yeah, right? Yeah, good. Yeah, don't tell me. It doesn't matter if you do. We can bypass that. So once you log in, you get a token generated by Microsoft, and I can use that token to do whatever I want. Anyways, typically, these service accounts will have really easy passwords on them because more than one person will have to deal with a service account, and if you make it a really hard password, nobody remembers that. But everyone remembers, I think that one was January 2018 or something, which tells me when they set it. And it also made it really easy for us to crack. So we cracked that SPN. It gave us access to a specific system, and on that system we found a user logged in. The user that was logged in just happened to be an admin, thank God, because that's why we got to DA so quick. But the user was part of a group called something sysops. And something sysops just happened to be local admin on pretty much every box in their network. So it gave us access to everything we wanted. I got Bloodhound over here on the left. Anyone know what not know what Bloodhound is? If you don't know what it is, go get it. Bloodhound will tell you all kinds of information in a visual form, okay, about your network. All the stuff that Microsoft will tell you, and all you have to do is have an account in the network and ask it, and it'll tell you what's in there. Okay, so we compromised an admin, and we took all of the things. So 919, this is one of their databases here, and I've obfuscated all the important stuff. And what you can't see in there, what I wanted to show you with those red boxes, and I can't even see them in here now because of the formatting. But what you see up there, I think it says something assault, something firearm, something jail. So this had to do with, it was a law enforcement database that we took information from. Great, this is kind of what it looks like visually. I kind of showed you that infrastructure page. So we try not to get into the network and just take over every machine. We don't throw Hail Marys inside the network. There's no point, right? We just try to gain access that we need to get the information we need. And what you see here is we gained access to the first guy. We'll call him Peter. Peter gave us access to the next system, which happened to be a web server. That web server had a back-end SQL database, and it just happened to be our SPS, 3 hops. The second box up there, top and bottom, they had 2 different SQL servers, so we got access to both of them and took all the data we want. We don't technically take the data. We have a tool that will generate fake PII, and we will exfil that data out in certain increments of size to see if they ever noticed things leaving, if they have a DLP solution in place. Okay, so did they notice anything? Did they do anything while we were there? This agency, and I wish I could tell you who it was, they were one of the hardest agencies for us to go against because they played a cat and mouse game. Now granted, they probably knew, I think there's probably about 60 people that knew what was going on, so they might have been looking for us at some point, but as you'll see, they didn't really take it to the next step. So we have something called action points. When I outbrief a CIO or CISO, they don't even know what enterprise administrator means. They don't understand the concept of you got DA or EA. Some of them do, some of them don't. CEOs, they don't know. They don't know what that means, nor do they care. They want to know, how does this affect me? So we built in something called action points. Hey, your people did something, and if they would have taken this next step, they would have gotten us out. So we kind of tell them how you could do that. Okay, so the first one, I think they had about 6 or 7. I'm only going to show you the first 3. So we didn't just get Peter. So I know someone that works at this place, and I almost told you who it was. I know someone that works at this place. She's a friend of my wife's, and I told my wife that I was going to phish her. And I phished her, and about 8 weeks later, I told her I did it, and she was not happy. So if you ever get into this kind of work, don't do that. I felt really bad. I had to buy her and her family tickets to the pumpkin patch. It cost me a fortune to apologize for this. Anyways, so... Yeah, don't. Trust me, it's not worth it. The juice is not worth the squeeze, okay? So up there on the board, I sent this lady an email, and immediately something went wrong. They found something. Something happened. I don't know what it was, but within 4 hours, we lost it. That's why I brought it up to her, and I said, hey, do you remember that day when this day something happened, you got phished? And she said, yeah. I was really pissed about that day because they called me back in. I was at an off-site location, and they called me back into work because I had to bring my computer in, and they had to re-image it. And so I lost all this time. My husband had to take the kids to soccer practice. That's why I had to buy pumpkin patch. Okay, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize it. But we saw the computer disappear, and we never got it back. Now, had they done a triage package on this, had they done some forensic stuff on this, they would have found not only the phishing domain, not only the persistence mechanism, all those indicators of compromise they could have gotten from this machine. And we didn't know if they did it or not. So we show up there, we assumed IR action. We assumed that they did something. And now at this point, if you're on our side of the fence, you have no idea what they did, and is anything else burned, and can I continue to use the domains that I used with this person? That's why we have those 3 different lanes, or campaigns as we call them. Because at this point, we put that lane on ice and said, we're not going to use this. We need to go back to Peter and use this other, lane 2. All that infrastructure that I showed you earlier, we break that down into 3 different lanes. So if one gets burned, I can use the second one. So we assumed this was burned. Event number 2, suspicious account enumeration. So I'm gonna step back here. This agency is using Gmail. We use Gmail at DHS. We were able to steal session cookies out of the user and install them on our systems back in the lab in Arlington and access their Gmail, their drives, their calendars, everything that they could see, we could see, and now their SOC couldn't see that we were looking at their sessions, because their sessions didn't expire for like a week. So we could sit there on their mail and watch what they're doing. How much time I got left? 10 minutes? Okay. I'm getting there. I'm getting close. Okay. So what you're seeing up here is us looking at their G Suite information. And on the top there, you see they got an email that said suspicious account enumeration. On the bottom one, it says there was an SMB. That's in Microsoft ATA. For those of you who don't know what that is, get it. Go research it and get it. It gave us a hard time in the network. It's one of the hardest things we'd ever had to deal with. But in the bottom, you see an alert from the ATA that says an SMB session enumeration, 1,200 accounts were enumerated on 12 different domain controllers. We got a little antsy because things were moving slow. So we asked all 12 of the domain controllers and tried to enumerate as much information about the domain as we could, and we got caught. And then what you see here, which you can't read, unfortunately, is their chat sessions. So they were chatting back and forth. These are their SOC guys that we got on their machines, and we watched what they were doing. And they had no idea we were watching, and they're saying, hey, did you see this? Hey, what are you going to do about it? Hey, and again, action point is they all talked about it. They did a couple of things, but had they taken that next step, they would have gotten us out of there. They just said, hey, is your computer doing this on purpose? And the person was like, no, I don't. And they left it at that. Okay, past the hash detection. So FireEye alerts on computer name. Again, I'm obfuscating things. What you're looking at is an alert, an email that they copied and pasted an alert from FireEye saying that this host had something, triggered an alert that said, I think it says suspicious activity, Cobalt Strike. And then below that, it says something about backdoor and then the IP address of where it's going. They literally had us. They literally had the words Cobalt Strike, backdoor, and the IP of where it was going. And they did nothing about it because they didn't understand what any of those words meant. We were sweating bullets at this point because we're like, oh, we're busted. Lane 2's gone. So we lost lane 1 and we lost lane 2 because we didn't know if we should stop or carry on. So we put that on ice and moved to lane 3. So that's basically the first 60 days plus what they did and did not do. And there's probably about 6 or 7 things. They were tracking us the entire time we were there. One of the other things that we did is we found their domain controller. We couldn't really get on it, but we found a guy who was running PowerShell scripts. So we saw their calendar that he was going to run a specific PowerShell script called NetCS from Microsoft, and he had downloaded it and he was going to run it the next day at 7 a.m. So that night, we spent till about 8 o'clock at night. We went to where he had it stored, took it out, put our beacon in there somehow and obfuscated it and wanted them to run it the next day. And he ran it. He didn't even read the code. It was from Microsoft, so why would you look at it? And it's been sitting on your network, so why would you ever look at that information? And he ran it, and it ran. And it tried to give us access back. Well, we technically did something wrong, so we never really got the access back, but he ran it, and we were happy that he ran it. What we did wrong is there's something about a second hop on a UNC path that doesn't push the auth with it. So if it's called a blind hop or second, yeah. See, he's nodding. He knows what I'm talking about. Good. Okay, so let's talk about MELs. Again, flares. I'm sending up flares in the network so someone will do something. I want someone to do something. So out of the 13 MELs that we send out, only 4 were seen. And one of them was Active Directory account, making an Active Directory account. A lot of folks will have this automated in their network. There are tools that will alert you to a new account being made. You can see the response. You can see that on 6 November, they reached out and said, hey, we see this. Oh, this is a good one. This is why I put this in here. We see this in here. And normally what we would do to this action is we would shut the internet off. I said, to the whole agency? He said, yeah, to the whole agency. And we're talking enormous. I told you 4 or 6 different sub-agencies. And they were going to turn off the internet. And I said, how about we don't? How about we don't? I got one operator, Matt, said, just let them. He goes, if it's a true red team, let them turn off the internet so that you can see what they do and if it works. So we said, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to notionally turn it off. And I said, I told them back, he said, we're going to turn it off and roll the KRBTGT hashes. If you don't know what that means, Google it, because you need to be doing it. You need to be rolling them on a scheduled basis. If you're not doing it, go research it. And they said, we're going to re-roll those. I said, go ahead. We already have beacons in the network, and we have the ability to re-privilege escalate. So even if you do that, we would get in. So we talked back and forth about what would happen if they shut it off and if we would still maintain access. They both agreed. All of us agreed that, yes, you guys would still maintain access, so they didn't turn it off. Thank God. I don't know how I'd explain that to an SCS. 5 minutes. Okay. I'm going to run through these really quick. So ransomware emulation, we did that. Oh, God. You guys, if you get ransomware, go tell somebody, please. What I'm seeing is the admins shut their boxes off and didn't tell anybody. That can't be your policy. That's a horrible policy, okay? Tell somebody. These aren't that important. Only 4 of 13 measurable events were observed. 1 was technology-based and 3 were people-based. So their people did good, I guess, out of the ones that they did detect. Again, I'm looking at your people, your processes, and technology. I want you to look at your people, processes, and technology. Don't ask me how to fix it. I'm not the CISO. I don't make 7 figures a year. I'm not going to tell you. If you want to pay me 7 figures a year, I will tell you how to fix it all. But I'm there to show you if what you put into place is actually working. That's why I don't care what the response is for your MELs, for your measurable events. The only reason I wanted to gather that is for statistics. I want to be able to put out statistics every year that says, on average, it takes the federal government 4 hours to notice a domain administrator being created in our network. That way, if you can't get a red team assessment that year, you can at least look at the stats and go, it takes them 4 hours to notice a domain admin being created. How long does it take us? Do we even do that? Those are the reasons that we have measurable events. Those are the reasons we kick them off. Yeah, that's it. Does anybody have any questions? Don't ask me technical questions. I'm the manager now. Yes, sir.
Those that didn't know what cobalt strike was, didn't understand what those terms meant, were they contractors or customers? Just out of curiosity.
The honest answer is I don't know, and really, does it matter at this point?
Well, it kind of does to me.
Okay. So here's what I'll tell you guys. There is an enormous need for security people. And there is a very small amount of really passionate security people. You know this because if this is not your first con, you're probably running into the same people you ran into last time, right? And so they have to be hired. You have to fill those seats. You have to put bodies in seats, even if it's just looking at logs and you're teaching someone, hey, if you see red, do something about it. And that's all they know. Yeah. And so one of the big things I tell when we do a 2 to 3 day outbrief, I outbrief executive folks and then I outbrief the technical folks. And when I outbrief the executive folks, I explain to them why this is so bad. I don't explain to them how we do. I tell them this is horrible because. And what I tell them is you need to get your defensive people offensive training. They need to know what it looks like from the other side because that helps you defend. The really good operators, the really good red teamers are guys who have been IT guys, network guys, desktop guys, hardware guys, network, I already said that. They're the guys who've done the defensive side in the past, and they know, hey, this is all the stuff I normally do, but now I get to break it, right? So I always tell them, get your people offensive training, please. It will help. The first time I switched from defense to offense, I sat in a class, and they were telling me some things, and a light bulb went off, and I had to excuse myself and make a phone call back to my guy at the office and say, hey, remember that thing I did? Go change that immediately before we get hacked. Because I didn't know. And if you don't know that you don't know, well, you're going to end up on the wrong side of one of our assessments. And then the last 2 days, we do a technical outbrief with all of the technical people that agency can muster so that we can share with them how we did it. Because typically what we hear is, that's not what Microsoft says. That's not supposed to work that way. You're not supposed to be able to do that because they say to do this. And we say, yeah, I know. And we figured out a way around it. And they need to understand how we're doing things. And it gives them the opportunity to ask all the questions they want. And then what we'll do is we'll also show them how we did it if they don't believe that we can do it. And we do that quite often. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Up here on my very last slide, you see the email address, ncats_info@hq.dhs.gov. If you work at a company that wants any of our services, and I suggest everyone in here sign up for cyber hygiene because it's free, all you do is send an email and say, hey, I saw this cool dude at RVAsec, and he told me that I needed this, so can you give me more information? And that starts the whole process, okay? Thank you so much.